Everyone can hear me fine?
There we go.
Oh, great. So good afternoon, everyone. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself. I have a PhD in education from the University of Toronto, Ontario Institute of Studies in Education. I'm currently a superintendent in a school board near Toronto. I played AAA hockey in Burlington all the way through from a young kid up until high school age. I mentioned to a few people before, I played junior B hockey, high school hockey following rep hockey, then junior B hockey for the Kitchener Dutchmen. And Don Orey's name was mentioned before. I remember he was my coach momentarily. And then I played one season for the University of Waterloo in 1989-90. So hockey's played a really important role in my life, as it has many of you. I'll spend some time just taking you through my recent journey. So it touches on more recent history of hockey in terms of my hockey collection, but it will delve into some other longer term histories on the topic of inclusion. So in terms of my background memories of hockey, I remember playing hockey in my basement with a stick and tennis ball, and played road hockey with my brother and friends in the neighborhood I played. I had a table hockey game and played it regularly with my friends. I remember going to see my first NHL game with my dad at Toronto Maple Leaf Gardens to see the Minnesota North Stars. I remember reviewing the stats of all the players that came out in the newspaper every Wednesday and stay up late to watch all the games on Hockey Night in Canada. I learned to ice skate with my older sister when I was 5 years old. I played hockey and road hockey, soccer, and also did track and field. Like many Canadians who grew up, for me in the 1970s, I dreamed of playing the National Hockey League someday or participating in the Olympics. There were no other players of color like me on the ice when I played competitive ice hockey. My parents immigrated to Canada from Jamaica in the 1960s, and I was born in Hamilton, Ontario. When we moved to Burlington, I was 3 years old. We were one of the first generation immigrants in the Biracial community of Burlington, and the community was very welcoming. I have very fond memories of the community I grew up in as a young person. So I'm just going to have you switch slide there. Thanks. So I'm going to fast forward a bit to March 2021, and I renewed my childhood hobby of collecting hockey cards, and I started my black hockey cards collection. And this collection has cards of every black or biracial player who has played at least has played at least one NHL game. So I began collecting cards when I was 7 years old with spare change my dad gave me. I bought them from the Jug Milk Variety Store that's still there in Burlington. I rode my bike to buy the cards, which was about a 3-4 minute ride from my house. And I still remember the pink bubblegum sticks in each of the package of 14 cards. I knew the names of all the players. I kept all my cards in a cardboard locker with a checklist, and I was totally obsessed with the cards. Let's flip slide. So I remember having the cards. Actually, I'm just going to have you go over a little bit further. Keep going. We'll come back to these later. Keep going. One more. Yeah, that's right. So I remember having the cards for Mike Morrison and Bill Riley, the second and third black players to play in the NHL in my collection, along with Tony McKegney. I was not aware of Willie Ree at the time. Like many young Canadians, children in the 80s, I was amazed by the talent of Wayne Gretzky and very soon became aware of the equally talented all-star teammate Grant Fuhr, the first black goalie in the NHL. In March 2021, I started to have conversations with my friends about card collecting again. I had a set from the 1979, which included superstar Wayne Gretzky, and this isn't the case for my card, but I'm sure you're aware that mint versions of this card can be worth up to $1 million. I don't have one of those cards, so I just wanted to complete my set. So I first purchased my set of 200 cards off eBay, and to finish off this 1979 set. And then at the time, I finished off that set, and because of a number of events going on in the world with especially the George Floyd murder, it really had paused needs for reflection on representation in many things in the world, but particularly my focus on this hobby at the time was on hockey. So when I finished off that set, 7980, it was complete, it's 400 cards. Through eBay, I started to search for other cards. So the first two cards I purchased were Grant Fuhr and Jerome McGinley. They were higher priced cards on eBay. And I was aware that Willie O'Ree had a card. I was aware he didn't have a rookie card, but from the 1958 season, there were more recent versions made for his card. So I did order that card as well. And I reclaimed my Mike Marsden and Bill Riley rookie cards that I had let go when I was younger. So you can go back, flip back to the beginning. So I got to share my collection experiences on the NHL Color of Hockey. It's a column written by William Douglas. So this is an article that was on the NHL website. And I was contacted by colleagues from my school board and friends from my current men's hockey league team and childhood teams and other card collectors. They were really letting me know they were impressed with what I had done with my project and the effect it was having on elevating stories of black NHL players, including many lesser-known players. So these players, especially those from the 1970s and 80s and before, may have overcome systemic and overt racism to successfully make it to the NHL. Many collectors reached out to me offering cards to complete my collection, and a few former players also connected with me. I had a good conversation with Bernie Saunders, the 5th NHL black player to play in the NHL. He's brothers with the late John Saunders, ESPN sportscaster. He was supportive of my initiative and mailed me an extra card he had for himself. And I also created a few custom cards for players who did not have a card, so they could be displayed in the Black Hockey History Tour. Just flip forward. So this is a mobile Black Hockey History mobile museum, which toured all the NHL cities last year. There's a more broad and inclusion version of the truck this year called United by Hockey. But the previous year's NHL Black Mobile History Tour. So I have collection now holds just over 100 original rookie cards of black and biracial players who played at least one NHL game. These are 100 stories that could easily be overlooked in a league which is far from being diverse in its makeup of players. Not many people know who these players are. I created this collection to draw attention to their accomplishments. From when Willie O'Ree joined the league in 1958 with the Boston Bruins up to present time, each hockey card is an artifact that captures this important history. So getting to know the players through my collection has deepened my passion for enjoying hockey as I've understood the players while watching their games and who's inside their jerseys and helmets. So I'm really fortunate to be connecting again with Bernice Carnegie at the back, who's going to be speaking after me. And we've known each other for a long time. And her dad, Herb Carnegie, is in my collection. I have a card for Herb Carnegie, and he was born in 1919. He's Jamaican descent, just as myself. Unfortunately, Herb Carnegie lived at a time in the 1930s and 40s in Canada when some black Canadians had faced higher degrees of racism. So Herb Carnegie is known as the best black player never to play in the NHL. And in many ways, he was born too soon. But Herb turned a negative into a positive. And he went into business after his hockey playing career, and in 1954 founded one of Canada's first hockey schools, the Future Aces, which I'm sure Bernice will speak about later on. But I know of some of the many accomplishments. I'll just touch on a few. He became the member of the Order of Canada and got the country's highest civilian award. This was much to do with much of the work he was doing and having an impact on young people. He was also inducted in the Canada Sports Hall of Fame in 2001, and really pleased to see that he was just inducted in the NHL Hall of Fame last year in the fall of 2022. I'm just going to have you flip forward. You can flip forward to Herb's card. So that was Herb's card, and now Willie O'Ree. Next one. Willie O'Ree is best known for being the first black player in the National Hockey League. He played as a winger for the Boston Bruins. And during the 1955-56 season, I learned that he played in Kitchener, ironically where I played junior hockey, and he was hit in the right eye by a puck and lost 95% of his vision. So according to NHL bylaws, he would not be allowed to compete, but O'Ree was determined to make an NHL and managed to keep this a secret. So he made his NHL debut with Boston in January 18, 1958 against the Montreal Canadiens, becoming the first black player in league history. He was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame as a builder in November 2018. So learning the stories of the players in my collection have made me feel more connected to them. I share many experiences lived by the players that I talked about today. They're not just filling a gap in color, but they're also the first in their spaces. They too started to fill this gap, and it feels reassuring that there have been many people who have had the same experiences as myself. So what this has taught me is, well, abundant in challenges, anyone can make a difference, anyone can achieve greatness, and there's strength in building a community. So for example, I'm gonna have you flip over to Mike Greer. So this is a rookie card of Mike Greer, and last year, July 2022, Mike Greer became the first general manager of the San Jose Sharks, and this makes him the first black general manager in NHL history. So my card collection is making a difference. My purpose is to shine the light on the diversity that does exist in hockey and celebrate the accomplishments of diverse players. And to make sure we're reminded that no one, no matter how small, should be overlooked. Stories like those of the players in my card collection can inspire and motivate young people and all of us everywhere. So Jerome McGinley, I think I've got a card for him. I may not, but he felt more confident. He said that when he was playing hockey as a kid, when he could say that Grant Fuhr, Tony McKegley, but NHL, it really helped him. And he went on to be a Hall of Famer. I realized how important it was for me to know a Grant Fuhr when I was growing up. And with this card collection, my hope is that black and other children of color everywhere will see themselves and know that hockey is for everyone. That they also belong in the game, whether they're players, fans, or card collectors. So until now, ice hockey has been mostly a white sport. According to an article from 2021, 97% of the players in the National Hockey League are white. Policy brief from 2018 highlights the change in the actual population. So we're expected to see that racial minorities in the United States, for example, will roughly double in size between now and 2060. And the multiracial population is going to triple. So representation through actions like myself, through parents watching the games, through players on the ice, in the NHL or not, will be even more critical as the population becomes diverse. And it kind of puts the cultural relevance and the economics into play, in perspective. It's not just about hockey, it's really about the broad future of the sport. So my card collection is just an example inviting you to reflect. In your community organization, how easy is it for those who are different to step into a space that's new for them? Are we giving everyone the opportunity to show and cultivate their talent? Because if we're not, how do we know we're not missing out on the next Michael Jordan of hockey or business or education? My work as an educator has taught me how important it is to know the stories of my colleagues and our students. To build a relationship with someone, you must first begin to understand their identities. So we're all historians in the room, and I really want to underscore the importance of how important it is to share stories. They help us see the many ways that we're alike and celebrate our differences. And when I did my PhD, I was writing about social capital, and it's a resource that we all have access through relationships. So the stronger the relationships we have in the community, the higher social capital. And the more we connect with each other, the more we come to trust each other. So part of what I've tried to pay forward with my project is just paying for stories to allow us to celebrate the rich, inclusive history of hockey in this country. I'm going to just flip back to a few slides. Thank you for flipping back there. Dave, you just go back to maybe slide number 2. So, yeah, we can go next forward. So that was the NHL article, and the next one is the truck I mentioned, and you can flip forward next one. So this was actually pretty neat because after the article was written, I really just wanted to have the card collection get an access to students in schools, and Bill Douglas said, oh, I want to write a story about your card collection. And then that kind of led to a few months down the line, the curators of the museum reached out to me, and they actually built this. I had a case of cards, but they actually built this this sort of frame that is in one aspect of the museum. So there's very important historical artifacts about blacks in hockey. I was just one exhibit. You can flip to our next slide.
What museum is it in?
It was called the NHL Black Hockey History Museum. So it ran last year, This year it's called something different. So this was my exhibit here, and you would see, there's Herb Carnegie and his work, and other, pioneers in hockey are throughout the museum. It went from each NHL city to city. Last year I was able to join the museum when it stopped in Toronto before I went to Toronto Maple Leaf Games, and I was able to speak to people and talk about my collection.
So that's the inside.
That's inside. Yeah, thank you. Share these cards. Yeah, we'll go for it. This was neat because after the NHL article was written, Upper Deck, lead on that one. Upper Deck Cards reached out to me, and they wrote an article about my collection, how I sort of like a lapsed collector that had this passion for this inclusive hockey collection. So it was really neat. There's a couple of articles written by Upper Deck, and I was invited to go to the Hall of Fame ceremony for Joe McGinley, and actually took some photos, and it was really neat to have that highlight. Next slide. This is my Grant Fuhrer card. Move forward. Show you Herb Carnegie, William Ree, my career. So this is what's happening this year. 10 cards were selected from the original Black Hockey History Collection. And Jeff Scott from the NHL asked me if I would like to be involved again donating my cards. So I've highlighted 10 cards of significance that people should know more about. And the United by Mobile Hockey History Truck is going again from NHL city to city. It's about a third way through the tour right now. So it stops about an hour or two before each NHL game, and people get to walk through the museum. So again, I'm one of the exhibits, and the other individuals on the screen, I had connected with others through this journey, through Instagram. So Chris Wu is a player of Asian descent who played for UCLA college hockey in the 80s. So he is an Asian card collector, and his son's friends were Hispanic card collectors. So they put together an exhibit. And then Name Cardinal, you might have seen him in the news recently as well too. He has started an indigenous card collection of players who are indigenous or part indigenous. I've got to know Name very well, and there were players in his collection like Darcy Tucker, Shane Corson. I wasn't aware that they're part indigenous players, and they're in his collection. Brian Trottier, there's probably some others you know. So that's United by Mobile Museum. And then that's just a snapshot of some of the cards, of the 30 cards. And if you go forward again. These were some of the players I've met. You just go back, sorry. Some of them are doing great initiatives related to hockey. And Mo Hashem is doing an initiative called Hockey for Youth that removes barriers for all people to access the game of hockey. It's sort of like a recreational ice hockey program, works with schools. They're given the equipment, and students are allowed to learn to play hockey for an entire year. There's other NHL players there, and Kwame Mason is a documentary film writer for the NHL, has done great work, and Mark Fraser is a former NHL player, works for the Toronto Maple Leafs right now, diversity. And the last piece I'll share with you, then I'll take some questions, is the next slide there is, I had this idea to move past the performative act of there's cards, but once we get past cards, there's more to the cards. So I'm engaged in a project now that's telling stories of the players. So I'm working my way through, and we've done one season of some of the early NHL players who played at least NHL game. So Bill Riley's being interviewed, Tony McKechnie's being interviewed. Some of the more recent players like Anthony Stewart has, Claude Vilgreen has. I've got a network of a number of people, former players that will be interviewed. And I'm hoping, Bernice, I'll be able to interview you if you have your dad soon as well. So this podcast is called My Hockey Hero. It's partnered with eBay Canada because I ended up buying all my cards for eBay. eBay Canada has made a corporate donation to Hockey Equality, which is one of many hockey programs in the GTA which are committed to removing barriers to all equity-deserving groups. So Anthony Stewart, former NHL player, he heads up that organization. So you can find that anywhere where you get your podcast. It's on Apple, it's on Spotify. It's been consistently in the top 50 right now for all hockey podcasts in Canada. And really fortunate, I'll be interviewing Willie O'Ree actually Monday, and hopefully his interview will go out 3-4 weeks from now. So it's really excited about that. So that's all I have to share with you today. Just touching on a few things with my journey and this experience and the recent podcast, and I'll take some questions.
Just a comment. I'm from St. Paul, Minnesota.